The OMEGA Seamaster 60th anniversary James Bond watch has arrived, and we are going to look at this together. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always, and OMEGA have just released the 60th anniversary Bond watches. They've released two versions. One of them just is, and the other one is pretty awesome. So let's start with the awesome one. The first OMEGA Seamaster that I got was the OMEGA Seamaster Great White, and I since have sold that, and that was my biggest watch journey regret. I actually made a full video on this, and I'll link it up here if you want to see it. Then I got the OMEGA Seamaster White dial with the ceramic bezel, and after that, because of the link that I shared with my dad to James Bond, I got the OMEGA Seamaster James Bond Limited Edition. It was one of the previous versions. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that because it is coming in a next video, so subscribe if you want to see that. But I think that watches should be based on memories. I think the watches should be based on sentimental value. And that's why these collaborations with brands are so valuable. When you look at OMEGA collaborating with, for example, the Moon Watch, the first watch in the moon, people will be thrown back to a time where they were seeing astronauts traveling to the moon for the first time. And that goes down in history. Then when you look at the Bond watch, you'll always be reminded of watching James Bond, the memories and experience that you felt when you watched that movie. But I'm in such a sort of caffeinated state. Let's just begin reviewing these watches. So the one that I love beyond all else is the blue dial. Now the details on this James Bond watch, or this OMEGA Seamaster, are what we're pretty much familiar with. It comes in at 42 millimeters in diameter, and a lot of the proportions are very, very similar, but there's a couple of key, I was gonna say tea, probably because I'm thinking about coffee and tea, but there's a couple of key differences between the OMEGA Seamaster, the normal OMEGA Seamaster, and this James Bond model. The first difference that you'll see on this OMEGA Seamaster, which is actually a throwback to the 1995 GoldenEye James Bond movie, is the dial. It has a blue oxalic anodized aluminum dial with laser engraved waves, and this is inspired by the Seamaster diver worn by James Bond in the 1995's GoldenEye. Pretty much the waves on this dial are a little bit closer together, they're a little bit tighter than the original version. What I'll do at the moment is I'll get up my white Seamaster and a picture of this, and you'll be able to see the differences between the waves on the dial. Now this is personal preference. Do you prefer one or the other? It's totally your choice. But I just think it's really cool that it's a kind of a throwback to the GoldenEye movie. The next detail that you will see on this watch, which is probably one of the coolest features that I've honestly ever seen on a limited edition, apart from maybe the Snoopy going around the moon, that's really, really cool, but this is awesome. So on the back of the watch, it actually has a screw down case back. Now, it has sapphire crystal glass over the case back so you can see in. And you know in James Bond where they kind of put a cone around the camera like this, and James Bond has his sort of iconic sequence where he runs and points the gun and shoots. That is playing out on the back of this watch at all times. There is quite literally a moving sequence happening on the back of this watch at all times. Now the effect of this case back kind of feature, this kind of sequence that's going on in the case back, is actually controlled by the Lollipop second hand, and that brings me nicely on to the Lollipop second hand. It's not my thing, but it is very, very different. I do quite like the fact that it's very, very different. I'm actually not sure how I feel about this. How do you guys feel about the Lollipop second hand? I'm looking at my Tissot at the moment, and I'm not sure how it would look with a Lollipop second hand, but then it's not an OMEGA. How do you guys feel about it? Another feature that you might have noticed is the mesh bracelet. Now this bracelet actually isn't titanium, but if you remember the previous version of the James Bond watch had a mesh titanium bracelet. Now this mesh bracelet is actually made from stainless steel and not titanium, so it will look and feel and wear a little bit chunkier, a little bit heavier than titanium, because steel is heavier than titanium. I've never been a huge fan of mesh bracelets, just personally. I've not got any critiques against them because I know it's personal preference, but I think this would just look awesome in a rubber. I think that if I were to get this watch, I'd put it in rubber. With that said, on the subject of that rubber strap, I'm looking at the NATO strap on this watch, and it looks awesome. I think because it looks a little bit more vintage, but it still looks sporty. It's just that's cool. And another detail that I like about this is it doesn't actually have a date window. Now, I do like 6 o'clock date windows, yes. That is my preference, my go-to. but the fact that it doesn't have a date window just makes it look so much more clean. Now, a lot of the other features on this watch are very similar to what you're used to. For example, it goes to 300 meters of water resistance, comes in at 42, as I've covered before, has sapphire crystal glass with anti-reflective coating. But a key difference here between the Seamaster that I have, the white dial, and this Seamaster is it's a little bit thicker. Actually, I believe it's 0.5 millimeters thicker, and that will be because of that display case back with the animation going on. I know that thickness can be a big thing to people, and it's actually an even bigger thing when you put a NATO strap under it, because a NATO strap needs to slot under the face of the watch, which would push it even higher. So I just bear that in mind if you're going for this watch. To me, it's not that huge of a deal, but for you, it might be a game changer. The movement on this model is the caliber 8806, which is of course in-house from Omega and COSC and METAS certified. It has 55 hours of power, is self-winding, all the bells and whistles that you normally get, and actually it's slightly different from the previous version, the Omega that I have, the Great White, because my Omega Seamaster is the caliber 8800. So there is a slight difference there. With all of this in mind, this watch comes in at £7,100, and that's if you can pick it up. My kind of guidance here is that this watch will be in high demand. It'll be very, very difficult to pick up. It is a true collector's item, in my opinion, and the display case back that they've got in the back makes this watch. I think this is awesome. Before we move on to the next watch, which is probably quite controversial in a lot of ways, it is time for the Chisholm Hunter tradition. It is time for the wrist check. What is on your wrist today? Please let me know in the comments. If anyone has a James Bond Omega model on, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see which one you have. Or send a picture to my Instagram, Chisholm Hunter Watches, to be featured on that page. I am currently wearing the Tissot PRX. Awesome watch. Having said that, the new, I'd say light green, it's kind of just Tiffany blue, is awesome. The new Omega Seamaster that we're going to look at is the next James Bond 60th anniversary piece, which is just far too cool for me. It's far too cool for me. I would never be able to pull this off. It's just mind-blowingly cool, and it's almost verging on the point of too cool. It's actually made, pretty much the case and the bracelet is made from Canopus Gold. Now, I didn't know what Canopus Gold was, so I looked up for you guys. This is really cool, listen to this. The alloy is named after the bright star Canopus, which is 71 times bigger and 10,000 times brighter than our sun. Due to its brilliance and position, Canopus became an important reference for many space agencies. Its unique composition includes platinum, rhodium, and palladium for color and stability. And this full watch, more or less, is made out of this alloy. That's awesome. This Seamaster also comes in at 42 millimeters, like most others in the collection, and can go to 300 meters underwater. Now, the dial has been made from a natural gray silicone, and it looks really deep. It looks like it's got a lot of depth, that dial. And it's actually a nod to the sands of 007's Caribbean Hideaway, which is pretty cool. It's a nice link. Circling the dial is a unidirectional rotating bezel with a paving of shaded green and yellow treated diamonds, with 2 diamonds at the 12 o'clock mark. Now, this is where this watch just gets too cool for me. I don't think I could ever pull off diamonds on my wrist. I'm just not cool enough. Now, on the back of this watch, you have the same design as the previous version, with the kind of the sequence of James Bond pointing the gun playing out, which is awesome. But the rotor is in gold instead of the steel that you can see in the previous one, so it looks a little more prominent, I would say. It does look a little more visible. The mesh bracelet on this model looks very similar to the previous one that we've talked about, apart from it's actually in 18 karat Canopus Gold, as is the face of the watch. So this watch, I've never had it on the wrist, but this watch I can assume will weigh a ton when you get it on the wrist. It will be a solid hunk of gold on your wrist. As well as that, the movement in this watch is the caliber 8807, which is a luxury version of the caliber 8806, housed inside the classic Seamaster Diver 300 meter models. There is no doubt in my mind that these watches are a love or hate in the industry. Some people love being branded up with James Bond, other people really don't. And I think the key difference here is that some people connect a sentimental attachment to James Bond, whereas others maybe don't. For example, when I look at a James Bond watch, I'm reminded of watching James Bond with my dad. I'm reminded of that warm feeling of sitting in the lounge with my father. And that's a really nice memory. So James Bond watches, Omega James Bond watches, mean a lot to me. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed and learned a little something. Let me know what you think of these Omega watches. Head over to our Instagram, Chisholm Hunter Watches, give us a follow on there. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. We're well on our way to 20K, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'll see you soon.